Hi everybody, my name is Rachel. I'm from UK Men's Sheds Association. I'm the Head of Development, and welcome to our Sheds Let's Talk Suicide session today. So it's really great that we're joined by Zero Suicide Alliance. They're going to be presenting our session today, all about shedders and suicide. So all about conversations, how to speak to people, warning signs to look out for, and where to get more support. I'm joined by Patrick Abrahams today. So Patrick, I'll ask you to introduce yourself if that's okay, and then I'll just say a couple of intro bits.
Good morning. I'm Patrick, a shedder. I set up the Froome Shed, in Somerset in 2014. I'm a UK Men's Shed Association ambassador based in the Southwest, but working with many sheds across the country and abroad. I'm also a member of the UK MSA Health and Wellbeing Group, HAWOG. And I'm an orange button wearer. Wearing the orange button indicates I've undergone specialised suicide prevention training, and while we're not able to counsel people, we can provide comprehensive signposting to relevant services. Now, people who are having thoughts of suicide or worried about a friend or family can now push the button, and when they see someone wearing a distinctive orange badge, and ask them for information and support. I've had several people approach me when I've been wearing the orange button. But before we start, I've had some people say to me, Patrick, you can't ask someone if they're suicidal. Just talking about suicide increases the chances a person will act on it. It's on the contrary. Evidence shows asking someone if they're suicidal can protect them. You'll hear much more about this later from Stephen about suicide myths, including this one. But the Zero Suicide Alliance, Samaritans, and many others report evidence shows asking someone if they're suicidal could protect them. Asking someone if they're suicidal, if they're having suicidal thoughts, can give them permission to tell you how they feel and let them know they're not a burden. My personal experience is that they feel listened to and hopefully less trapped. Their feelings are validated and they know someone cares about them. Reaching out can save a life. Knowing where you can signpost people is absolutely critical. That's me, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And as Patrick says, Steve's going to go into that a lot more later. I'll let Steve introduce himself in a minute, but just to raise a couple of important points. Obviously, this session deals with the topic of suicide. This could be triggering or very sensitive or upsetting for anybody watching. So if you are kind of watching the session and you're finding it upsetting, you don't have to carry on. We're here in the comments, so if you'd like to send us a comment, you can do. Please, if you're going to share any experiences of people that you know, please keep it confidential or anonymous. We don't want anybody kind of named. If you are concerned about somebody, though, if you've got immediate concern to their safety, please reach out and contact 111 for support or other support agencies, which we are going to be displaying throughout the session. If you are feeling suicidal yourself, please reach out to us for support. And again, we can signpost you for immediate help. Also, just to say thank you very much for Stephen and Amy who've arranged this session from Zero Suicide Alliance. This is part of our suicide prevention project. We have 2 staff members who are working on this at the moment, and we've had various kind of initiatives running over the last year. So this is the first of 3 sessions. So the sessions are all going to have very similar content. So if you're kind of missing, if you have to only watch half of this, or if you want to attend again or let other people know about the other 2 sessions, they'll be on the 13th of March and the 25th of March, but I'll be sure to kind of advertise those in advance as well. So I'll hand over now to Steve, who's going to jump into kind of his session and the presentation. Please post any questions that you've got in the comments, and there will be a question session at the end. Also, if you just want to say hello, let us know which shed that you're watching from, please, again, post in the comments. And thank you very much for watching. So Patrick, I'll put us backstage and I'll hand over to Steve.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. I say I'll run through, it's a bit of running through the Zero Suicide Alliance training program, looking a bit at that, and I'll sort of go through different aspects of that and where we are throughout this sort of presentation. As I said, at the end of it, if there's any questions, you can do that, and we will try and answer questions there. So looking at what the Zero Suicide Alliance is, it's an initiative hosted by Merseycare NHS Trust, and that's where I sit and I work at the moment in time. So we offer a lot of free online training. I'll go through a little bit of the training in a minute and sort of see what ones that may fit you. And it's there to sort of empower, educate, and equip you to help in discussing suicide with different people and sort of working with people with suicidal thoughts. And we've got a little bit of a scenario later on, which will sort of give a little bit of an indication of how you start a conversation and how to engage in that conversation. So as a bit by means of introduction for myself, I'm Steve Messenger. I've worked in Mersey Care for over 30 years now, coming on to 40 years in the mental health. I've worked on our suicide prevention program. We set that up specifically in 2016, and I've worked in that since that time. So we do a lot of work within the trust, but also reaching out across the Merseyside area, working with our local councils and that, and sort of linking in with different areas through the ZSA, like the men's sheds, that as well. So we've got that sort of wider reach. ZSA's wise, as I said, there's a lot of free training online. The aim of the training is to try and work across 3 main areas, and that's going to C, which is recognising that the person may be at risk of suicide and identifying some of the signs in relation to that. Saying to them then, so starting a conversation, talking to someone about suicide. As Patrick said, if they're thinking about suicide, asking them about it won't be first thing with them. They've contemplated a lot of this. They've probably planned through a lot more. So starting that conversation can have a lot of benefits. And the last part as well is then signposting. So that's looking at where, if we identify someone's at risk, where we can signpost them onto the different services that are available. As we said, we've got 111 option 2, we've got the Samaritans, the Shout, and we've got a few of them as sort of a slide at the end, give it a little bit of context. But when we talk about the training on the ZSA, as I say, we've got a couple of different areas now, and we're looking at building on that as well as we move on through the next couple of years on where we can develop. So there's the original suicide awareness training, there's a longer version, a shorter version of that one. We've added autism, we've added veterans, university students, people around prisons, taxi drivers. We're also looking at sort of other ones as well. So we've got like probation services and sort of different ones with different translations as well. So there's a lot of information in there. There's also a lot of resources within the actual ZSA online platform as well. So you can go in and link into that. We're going to run a poll. I think Rachel's going to set something up for that for us online, so we can just sort of get an indication of how you feel with regards if someone is suicidal. Do you feel confident enough to approach them? Do you feel confident to start that conversation? And this is sort of just to give us an idea and sort of if we're hitting everything right with regards to what we're doing on our training wise. If that's up and running, or if not, sort of we catch it up a bit later on.
I was just going to say, Steve, there's some issue with our YouTube. So the stream has stopped on YouTube, but we are still obviously live and this is still recording. So I don't think we can do the stream now, but I do have a survey which I'm going to share at the end for people. And that kind of asks those questions in it. So we'll just carry on if that's okay.
All right, we'll do that then. Right, well, looking at suicides as a sort of wider context, if we look at it down and sort of way down, in the world, there's around 700,000 people die every year by suicide. When we look at that from sort of a UK point of view, we've got around 6,000 people per year that are dying by suicide. What research always tells us as well is that 1 in 5 people will experience suicide thoughts at some point in their life. So it's something that is there and people will talk about, will have that feeling. And from that, 1 in 15 will attempt suicide as well. So we know there's a lot of sort of part around that and sort of bits that we need to break, need to be able to sort of break that taboo around suicide and start talking about it to help them people. When we look at the numbers, realistic terms, they look very small from what we've got, but we're looking at sort of bigger things that, we're looking at 1 in 5 people, that counts a lot more as going to have suicidal thoughts. And if we talk, we can help that. So what we want to do with this training and sort of the training that we have online as well is make yourself be empowered to act around suicide, give you a better understanding of what to do, how to approach someone, how to talk to someone around suicide, and be equipped then with sort of the abilities and the skills around to help you. So knowing where you can signpost people, knowing how to start that conversation and how to sort of conduct yourself during them conversations as well. But what we've got with suicide, as I said, is the stigma around it. There's still a lot of people that find it hard to talk about suicide. There's a fear around that people will judge them. So therefore they won't talk enough about it. And what we've got to do is sort of change the way we talk about suicide. If we do that, we can save lives. We said, you look at it 20 years ago, people never spoke about cancer. It was always the big C, it was always whispered, it was always quiet. Now you see adverts on TV about help us support cancer, help us sort of do this, and we can reach out and we can save people that way. If we can get that sort of national prominence and national link up again with suicide, we can save a lot more people as well. But when we look, we are tied with suicides and the sort of stigma and the language that the people use. So we have a lot of people talking about committed suicide. We try and change that round to sort of say someone has died by suicide or has took their own life. The reasons behind that is saying someone's committed suicide makes it look like it's an illegal act. You commit a crime, you commit a robbery, you commit something like that. And it goes back to when suicide was illegal up to sort of the early 1960s in the UK. And that term has stuck alongside it. So we want to try and move away that. If we can get away that sort of look that it's a bad part, it's a criminal act sort of thing, we hopefully can start talking about it. But on the other hand as well, we don't want to talk about successful suicide attempts or someone was successful in suicide. Again, that doesn't give the right sort of view. You're successful in your exams, you're successful in passing your driving test. You shouldn't be successful in taking your life. So again, we're looking that took their own life, died by suicide, using them sort of ones on a similar sort of view. Unsuccessful, again, sort of makes it look like a failure on something, so attempted suicides, non-fatal attempts. When we are talking about people and sort of as we start talking to people as well, we need to talk to people on an adult basis. It is hard sort of how you identify and sort of getting over that sort of initial discussion part, but saying to someone that you're not going to do something silly, are you, if I leave you, does make it a little bit demeaning, does make it sound like you were talking to your younger children. You're not going to do anything silly now. So let's talk to people on an adult basis and a face-to-face basis that way round. The last one's there concerning suicide rates, suicide epidemics. We've all lived through an epidemic through COVID. We know what that's like. Suicide, has said the numbers may be small when we look at it in the grand scheme of things, but it's something that we hope we can reduce even further. So there is no sort of epidemic. But when we look at myths around suicide as well, and it was Patrick sort of spoke briefly about this at the start as well, saying that talking about suicide is a bad idea and it may give someone the idea to go on. The facts of that are that research has indicated that if we talk about suicide and we start talking about suicide to people and asking that direct, it basically opens that door for that person. They feel that they're going to be listened to. They feel that they've got someone that they can talk to and start getting their thoughts out and sort of easing that pressure and that burden that they've got on themselves, and sort of we can start then putting things in place to help them, and hopefully then sort of we get over this phase that they see that suicide is the only way out. They've thought about this. Their thought process has been that everything else is in place, nothing else has worked, this is the only answer. It's not. There are other things that we can do, that we can help people with. So the next one, again, is people who talk about suicide aren't serious and won't go through with it. Again, when it comes down to the facts in relation to this one, people who have taken their own life have often told someone that they're going to do it. And again, it comes down to understanding how we can start that conversation and how we can engage in that conversation then again and sort of work through them ones. When we look at it, the majority of people who feel suicidal and attempt to take their life don't actually want to die. They just don't want to live the life that they are currently living. So there's always something that we can look and maybe change around that can improve things. Or it may be dark, there are things that we can move and change and sort of build into them then to give them that support. And the last part there is sort of, as we said, ending their life may be seem like the only way out for them. But there is hope. We can find that hope. We can find that support. We can find things to do to sort of help and get over that dark place or that moment in time that they feel that that's the only part and that's their only way out. So we can find other paths, other routes. So when we look at sort of how do we start talking about suicide, how do we understand that someone is feeling suicidal? And the main sort of part of that is if someone starts talking about suicide, and that may not seem directly, it may be a case of, I wish I hadn't been born, I don't want to be here, I'll be better off dead. It's them sort of ones that, sort of initial things that we think are just throwaway comments at the time. Sometimes we can say in just general conversation, God, I can't cope with this anymore, sort of them little things. Those as well, sort of looking at no hope for the future. There's nothing there. I feel trapped. There's no way out. Things are never going to get better for me. Things are always going to be this bad. And again, sort of that links into sort of self-loathing of themselves, I'm worthless, I can't do this, I can't get this bit done. A lot of the time sort of things can link into deterioration in mental health, deterioration in physical health. Sometimes when you look at how you function with it, if you're feeling unwell at a time, it may be a case it takes you a little bit longer to achieve a task than what it would do if you're feeling fully well within yourself. So then sort of parts that I can't do this, I can't get it over with, it maybe just be a case of we're taking that little bit more time to do it and get the job right and get the pieces right for what we're doing. Other things that we look at is something a little bit more in focus on what that person's doing. So people getting the affairs in order, so making a will, giving belongings away, that don't seem to be sort of in line with things, like if you've got someone come over from a long distance and you're giving them sort of, these are keepsakes for you for going back home, say someone was coming back from Australia, then fair enough. But if someone's given items away of value to them, to people that are close by, you've got to start thinking, what is this sort of about? What's the difference here? What's changing here? And again, someone saying goodbye or withdrawing from others, not going to be here, sort of becoming more isolated. Again, the last parts linking in with drugs, alcohol, sort of them sort of areas, we can see them again using drug and alcohol can reduce the risk levels of someone and can make it more likely that they will attempt or make an attempt at suicide. And the last part we say as well, and what we say to our staff, is if we've got people who have been really low, in low mood, sort of can't get out of this sort of pit of despair that they feel they're in, and then all of a sudden their mood changes to a drastic where they're happy, everything's great, there's got to have been something that's changed there. There's got to have been something that's through. And that could be a thing of, yeah, they have got affairs in order. They think that everything's through now. They've agreed sort of how the mortgage is going to go. They've agreed, the will's been agreed and signed off. So everything they think they need is now in place. So we've got them sort of risk issues then. So if we see anything about that, we've got to start talking to them, and we need to encourage people to talk, especially men in the sort of 40s, 50s. This is our biggest sort of group that we need to do. So we need to start that conversation with them people. So how do we do it? How do we start a conversation? If you can, look and find a time and a place where you're able to talk openly without interruption. So you're able to sit down with someone, you're able to engage in a conversation, you're not going to be interrupted, there's not going to be sort of that sort of problem where you've only got 2 minutes to talk. Try and give that a little bit of time as well. Asking open questions and listen to how they answer them without judging them. So that's a case of try and avoid questions that are just going to have a yes, no answer, and understand what they're saying. Yeah, and I can appreciate that. But again, if we're listening without judgment, don't sort of agree with that suicide was the only approach that they could take at this time. You can listen without judgment, but you don't agree into sort of them parts. You don't validate the acts of suicide. Again, don't avoid that topic as well. Asking direct questions about it. As we said, asking someone about suicide won't sort of make that problem. It'll open that gate. It'll open that door for them to talk. And again, we say with our staff, if you think that you've said the wrong thing, don't panic about it. Sometimes saying the wrong thing can be a bit of an icebreaker, can sort of inject that little bit of humour into the conversation. That can start a conversation talking a little bit better than we are talking, and we are hitting a matter and a subject that is difficult at times to talk about. If we're looking at things as well, we're looking at the likes of yourselves who may be talking to other people in the sheds. Look at sort of signposted information as well. You can't take everything on yourself. You've got to look after your own well-being as well. So there are things out there. As I said, we've got parts, the urgent care lines that should be available for a lot of mental health services. There's A&E departments that have mental health liaison staff in there. There's the 111 option 2 now for mental health support. That's available, and obviously Samaritans as well. And the last part of that, if you're having that conversation and the sort of things, try and stay connected with that person. Sort of say, I'll see you next week, or I'll see you next time you're in the shed. Let's have a conversation there, see how things are going on, sort of what things can we do. If there are things as well that are a danger for them, sort of try and keep them safe from that. Try and see if they're willing to sort of release them sort of parts as well, or it may be a case of you need to sort of go as well and help them discuss with A&E staff, the GP or something like that. It may be a case of you go and just support them with that. So as we said, in that it's important to be direct. Using the word suicide will not put that thought in someone's head. They've probably thought about it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times before, and they run that scenario through, and that's what they're thinking of, and that's the way they see. So it's not going to be the thing that they suddenly say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. They have thought about it, and it will open the conversation then, so it will make it less likely to happen. So what I'm going to do is sort of try and look at a bit of a scenario in relation to sort of a person coming into the sheds. So we've got Steve, 47-year-old man, sometimes pops into the sheds, works a little bit, potters about, does his normal bits. You notice that he seemed a little bit more withdrawn and distracted and less enthusiastic than he usually is when he turns up. He's hardly spoken to anyone, and it doesn't look like he's taking care of himself. So maybe a case of his clothes are a bit disheveled, or he hasn't had a shave, something like that. Or he appears tired and drinking more coffee than usual, maybe even other drinks, and maybe a case of you can smell increased alcohol or something like that. So we got a few sort of things there that are linking us in, that are causing us a few concerns. You've had conversations with Steve before, and you know that he's been struggling to find accommodation. He's had situations where he's been promised accommodation and that's fell through. Happens to loads of people, sort of especially at the moment in time with sort of the way housing systems are running. There's parts there. He's unemployed and he's been struggling to make his benefits last as well. He's gone from possibly a good job, he had a lot more money, and now he's got a lot less money than he has to spread over the month as well. So he's got potential difficulties there trying to find that. Following his job loss, he also had a relationship breakdown, and he's now lost contact with his family, and his family's sort of moved away. His ex-partner and their 3 children aren't even talking to him, so he's going through a bit of a bad time, Steve. So there's a lot of sort of pressures on his shoulders. So where we're going with him, we sort of find a bit of a place to talk to him, see if he's got a couple of minutes to chat, and sort of sit down and just have a little bit of a conversation with him, see how things are going. If you've got things to signpost, as I say, probably the easiest one is 111 option 2 now, which will direct you to mental health services in your area. So we've got that as a signpost. If sort of Samaritan's numbers as well, you've got them there that can pass on. Look at sort of where he is, sort of what you know about him, what he's been like, sort of how he's been conducting himself, and sort of get a little bit of understanding, that maybe these things are going to come through. So we can talk about these as well. So a little bit there as well to sort of give a little bit of context in your conversation. So while we're talking, be direct, asking if he's having suicidal thoughts, and again saying, are you having suicidal thoughts, or do you feel like you want to harm yourself as well? Are good questions to ask. If you can't ask suicide directly, asking, do you want to harm yourself, maybe a good one to come through. As Patrick was saying, sometimes you can say, how are you feeling, or how is your health as well, too. Questions that are pretty much the same but can give a different answer as well. As we said, listen without judgments. So understand what he's saying, don't judge where he's feeling. Yeah, I can see why these things are bad. You lost your job, your wife's kicked you out the house, you're not seeing your kids. All these things are bad at this moment in time, but suicide isn't the solution to that. We're not validating suicide as a way out. There's the things that we need to do that maybe we can find solutions that we can get you back on the streets, get you back on the proper foot again, and your family can maybe come back. We start talking to the family, we've got a house, that a long-term solution maybe down the line, but it's going to take them steps to get there. Asking open questions again, so avoiding the yes/no ones. What has made you feel this way? What happened next? Them sorts of things. It gets the conversation. Listening, then a sort of that conversation will give you sort of other questions to ask as well, so we can again increase that sort of part and try and move away from the yes/no. And the last one's allow for periods of silence. Let that person gather their thoughts. It may be hard for them to talk to someone, maybe hard for people just to start that question first off, answer them sort of questions. What we said and what I've found from sort of my work over the years is, if you are talking to someone and there's that bit of silence, let that silence run until you feel a little bit uncomfortable with it yourself. If you're starting to feel uncomfortable, the likelihood that person is. At that point, silently count to 5 or 10 in your head and just give that little bit more time. If you've been feeling uncomfortable and you've got to that count to 10 and there's still nothing being said, think about rephrasing the question then that you've just asked, or changing it around a little bit to see if you can get a proper answer. So we've got all them. We sort of done this conversation with Steve, and sort of as he's going through, he's admitted that he's probably struggling with depression. So you said that maybe you should access a support for a bit of help, and around his depression, and maybe things that the GP may be able to do. It's not always a case that medication may be the answer. There are other parts, talk and therapies that people can get to as well. So there may be sort of ways they can look at that. If needs be as well, it could be that you support him going to see the GP so you're giving them that help. So you've had the conversation, maybe you can pass on a bit of information as well there. Look at other things, coping strategies. One of the biggest things we're doing within the trust is safety planning, and sort of we're trying to link that out as well. There's a lot of sort of free online safety plans that you can do that give a person a basic look at sort of what they do, how they feel, how they manage them feelings, and how they get over them, so they can plan it out themselves. Look, as well as we said, sort of again, emergency access, the 111, A&E, Samaritans, all them sort of areas are there for them as well. After you've had the catch up, after you've had the discussion as well, say you'll catch up with them again in a couple of days, see how they are, give some that it's a case of this has just not been a one-off discussion. You are concerned about them, you are sort of looking out for them as well, and you sort of see them again next time round or whenever. So when we've got this, we've sort of got it, Steve's saying he feels better, thanks you for listening, it's the first time someone's really sat down and spoke to him about it. He's got a lot off his chest, he can understand where he is now. So he said he's going to go and book a GP appointment and look at other services that are around as well. He said at the moment he doesn't need any urgent help, but he knows, you've passed him information there. He knows that there are things available for him if he does feel that needs there. And again, there's sort of bits of banners that are rolling across the bottom of the screen that you can see with that. So we got all them. So what have we got from that? What have we sort of found out? You identified that Steve was struggling. You saw that. And it's a case of when you're working within the shed, it may be a case of someone and you can see them signs. You can sort of think that this person's not right. But it may be though that if you're too close to that person, you don't see it. It may be other shedders who see that. And sort of, so it's a case of, it's a group mentality here. If everyone looks out for everyone else, we can keep everyone safe. But we know he's struggling. So we've asked him directly about suicide. You've listened to what he's had to say. You haven't judged him on sort of the things that he's going through, and he's had a pretty bad time of it of late, but you haven't judged anything there. The only thing you've done is you haven't validated suicide as a way out. You know that he doesn't have a plan to end his life at the moment. He's safe, but he needs a little bit of support from GPs. That may be the main one that we can do and look for there. So you've identified him as a risk part there, and he's going to see his GP, but you've also given additional support, so he knows the sort of things out there as well. So we've done a little bit, we've identified things, he's a little bit more reassured, and we can sort of see him again in a couple of days' time, next time he's in the shed with us, and sort of check that everything's going on. He's been and seen his GP, and he's got them parts. So we've done all that that was just a quick sort of review of a person and how they are. What we want to do and sort of what we're looking at here is we believe that suicide is preventable. So we all have a role to play in that. Part of this is improving the awareness, as you said, the sort of start parts, the numbers that are there, how people are. Then changing how we talk about suicide. We don't want it as a taboo subject. We want people to be able to speak openly about it. We want people to not feel afraid that those thoughts, those feelings they're having, all the contributory factors that are sort of linking into their life now are a problem for them and can make them feel suicidal, but we can talk, we are able to do that. If we see them warning signs as well, we're able to reach out and we'll start talking to someone and sort of get involved in that conversation and help them then. And we've got the signposting parts then, as we said, there's a few there, sort of the main ones we said, the Samaritans, Shout is a text-based service. If someone doesn't want to talk to someone directly, you can do that, and it's all run through text-based messages, so there's no direct conversation. The Hub of Hope as well is a free app that you can download on your phone that will direct you to a lot of services around your area. It uses the geolocation part of your phone to identify where you are. So if you're struggling, you are normally in Scotland, for some point you're down in work in London, it'll identify some of the groups that are available around London that you can use. And also, again, we've got the ZSA directory. You can link into that. There's a lot of helpful advice and support stuff available within that. The link there is there for that one, so you can see, but just searching for Zero Suicide Alliance as well on your Google searches, and that will bring that part up as well. You can sort of check through there. Won't do that. We've got the questions now, and the last part, again, we are a charity, so we do appreciate additional funds if you can, and if you feel this has been useful, we'd be grateful on that. So thank you. I'll hand back to Rachel now.
Thanks very much, Steve. And yeah, that was really, really interesting. I would just like to acknowledge that we have had some technical issues. Our YouTube stream did go down quite near the start. So I'm so sorry if anybody was watching on that and I've had to switch to Facebook. The session will still be available afterwards, and we'll figure out, ready for the next one, how to avoid that happening. So apologies. As Steve said, if anybody that is watching has got any questions, please just post them in the comments, and we can put them to Steve. But for now, I think, Patrick, I guess maybe you or I have got a couple of questions that we could ask Steve.
Yeah, I've got a question for Stephen regarding warning signs. I mean, I've had several. I've had several conversations with friends and relatives of people who have died from suicide, and several of them have said to me, I knew he wasn't well, but I didn't realize he was that bad. And I think, just to reinforce your point about, warning signs, if you see a warning sign, asking may make a big difference. So almost trust your instinct as well, and don't be one of those people who said, I knew he wasn't well, but I didn't realize he was that bad.
Yeah, and I think that's partly as well. A lot of people will see that and sort of say, I knew he wasn't, but it's not for me to ask. Someone else will do it. It's a case of, if you're seeing that and that's anyone, asking that question. And that's why we say trying to break that taboo subject of it. It is hard. It is a hard question to ask. We acknowledge that some of our mental health staff find it difficult as well. That's why I said, sort of, have you thought about harming yourself? Maybe a little bit easier way to ask a similar question as well. But if you see it, again, if you say, if that gut feeling that there's something not right with this person, our guts are normally quite good with these sorts of things. So asking that question then can ease your own fears. Don't leave it to someone else. It's, if you see it, you ask. Don't think that someone else will do it, because that person is probably thinking, well, someone else will do it as well. So we have got that part.
Yeah, good point.
And Steve, yesterday when we were talking, before the session, obviously, one of the things you mentioned about was if maybe you're not the closest person to that person you're worried about, it's okay to maybe share your concern with somebody else and ask if they'd speak to them. Is that right?
Yeah, you can do that. Again, it's sort of, if you notice something, and I suppose in the shed area as well, where you're working with a group of people, you don't really know that person, but you can think, I don't think that person's quite right. There's something going on with that. It may be a case of saying to someone else, who knows that person a little bit better, look, I'm seeing this, is this something that is the norm for this person or whatever, and start that conversation. It's a case of, we all need to look out for everyone. And that's part of the thing. If we can break the thing where we don't say anything about a concern, we start opening that conversation and start talking that conversation and seeing what we see, we can help and signpost and support people then. A lot of this sort of said, in a way, the job I do, some ways I describe it as, I do a job where everything's in the rear view mirror. And that is a case of, I only see the accidents behind me. I never see the people that we do something. put something in place for that person, that they don't go on and take their life. All we see is the accidents. We don't see that person that we've saved by that one little conversation or that one little observation that has started the conversation.
And that's, I think, a really good point. And for sheds as well, that's something they will experience, is that they will be an intervention for a lot of people where, things could have gone a different way, not just around suicide, but all different things. And they don't necessarily see what they've prevented, but they can see somebody maybe living a happier life and enjoying things a little bit more by being part of the shed. I think that point as well about kind of, in the shed, there's all different people there. It's not just you with your eyes on somebody. The nice thing about sheds is all the different people, all the different relationships, and it will be a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, I guess, if somebody might notice one thing and somebody might notice another thing. So yeah, I guess recognizing that and being able to talk about it is really important.
I think there's one other area, Stephen, which I'd like just to raise. As you say, asking these questions is difficult, and some people find it very difficult. Now, I've had some very difficult conversations with people regarding suicide, trauma, anxiety, and depression, which have left a real lasting impression on me. And what advice would you give on this subject to help you look after yourself, your own well-being? I know you mentioned it earlier, but you have to look after yourself as well when helping other people.
Yeah, and that's it, and sort of not holding things in yourself, sort of trying to get it out and discuss with other people. A lot of what we have, as we said, especially sort of middle-aged men, 40s, 50s, we hold everything. We don't talk, and sort of saying, this is a little bit hard for me, and sort of just getting that conversation out. If we are talking to people, if you are talking to people suicidal as well, as you said yourself, Patrick, you're not a counsellor in a way. You are there for people to approach you. It's a case of sort of signposts and helping out and sort of saying, right, these are the ways to go. This will help you. I can't do everything. This may be the way to help you. But look after yourself as well. Talk to other people how you are feeling. Sort of, if these conversations are getting a little bit down, if you are talking to someone who's having a real hard time of it, ask if they're willing to bring someone else in as well. Sharing that burden across 2-3 people can ease it on yourself and can sort of help everyone that way around. So look at sort of ways, consider your own health as well. You don't sort of want to take everything on and cause yourself more problems.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And we've had a good comment here. I'll just flash it up if I can. There we go. Yeah. So Joe Phillips' question I've used is, what can we do together to make you feel safe? Enables the person to think of a first step themselves and start to put a safe plan in place.
Really good question.
Yeah. And I think that's it. It's sort of, it's how you start that conversation and sort of getting that first step. If you notice someone is there, is having an issue, going to, as we said before, you identify it, you talking it, or you sort of passing on your concerns as well and approach someone with someone they know. So yeah, anything that can start the conversation is great.
Yeah, definitely. And Patrick, question kind of for you really, as somebody from a shed, what kind of things do you think might be helpful in the shed to, I guess, enable questions or conversations around mental health? Is there any kind of things that you might recommend that we've seen from other sheds that they're doing? Or
well, there's a couple of things really. I mean, when we had the survey, in fact, in March 2023, 25% of shed leaders said that they had conversations with people about how they're attending the shed had possibly saved their lives. And I've heard them people say things like, it saved my life, my marriage, and my health. I mean, I think Joe's question was really good, that what can we do together to help you be in a safe place, is a good one. I think the second question is always very good. I do the one, how are you? And people say fine, which if you look up online, you'll find that answer can stand for different things other than fine. I won't repeat it here for obvious reasons, but I often follow it up with, how's your health? And people will often say, I'm fine. You say, how's your health? They go, well, actually, I've just been diagnosed with high blood pressure, and so you almost separate the thing between the person and their health, which I found quite useful. The other one is, how are you? I'm fine. How are you today? Is quite a good one, because they say, well, normally I'm great. However, today I'm a bit down. So I think there's some fairly simple things, and I think Amy was making some suggestion that role playing may help. Clearly, use online training from Zero Suicide Alliance, which is fantastic. If you're in Orange Button County, do that, because one of the things every month in Somerset, the Orange Button have an online meeting, and if you have concerns, you can share them with other people who are in the same boat. So there's lots of help out there, but you almost have to take a first step, and it's not easy, like Stephen said. So I would practice the questions. And I've had things where I've asked people about that, and they said, absolutely not. I'm just fed up because my boiler broke down this morning, or and then you can move on, very easily. And people aren't embarrassed by it. And the more often you do it, well, it doesn't ever become easy, I don't think, does it, Stephen? But
No.
It never becomes easy. But nevertheless, it's important, and it can make a difference. I mean, I think the other thing that I worry about is that no warning signs. I've had personal experience where someone wasn't bereaved, they weren't exuberant, they weren't depressed, they weren't, etc., etc. And I think Stephen may mention, there may be other people who might have noticed, and it's important that people take personal, steps and share it with other people, because you don't want to be the person that said, I knew he was bad, I didn't think he was that bad.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Patrick, that thing of how to frame questions and what to ask, I think is really important. And, being part of your shed, you'll know kind of who will respond in what way to certain questions as well by having those relationships. I suppose other things could be having information in your phone. If somebody does share something with you and actually you've got a number there, and then that you can pass on if you're immediately concerned, or knowing yourself where you might signpost people to, or having that in the shed somewhere that people can access if they need to discreetly, or if they want to pass it on or share it. Some sheds have like a health and wellbeing folder, or they have posters on the wall, or whatever it might be. So number of different things. If anyone else has got a question or a comment, please pop it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll kind of wrap up. Obviously, Steve, you mentioned the different training options on Zero Suicide Alliance. So obviously we'd encourage anybody to go and have a look at those and do some further training. There's different options that last different amounts of time. Is there anything else you want to highlight on the website, or anything to do with the training, Steve?
I think there's a lot, as we said, there's a lot of training there, but there's also a lot of resources online as well, like sort of real life stories and sort of maps to help you look at sort of a little bit more around your area and what are the issues around there as well. So there's all them sorts of parts. There's lots of things that hopefully people can find something can get some use out of as well.
Brill. I have just posted a link in the comments, which is a survey, just a little short feedback survey. It's less than 10 questions. I'll post it on the screen as well. I'm sorry it wouldn't let me customize the link, so this is the link. I'll just leave it up for a couple of minutes if you want to jot it down, but that will take you to our feedback survey. As I say, it's only kind of less than 10 questions, but it would be really helpful if anyone that's watched can fill it in, and just let us know how you found today. And apologies again for the technical issues. I'm sorry if you missed chunks of the session. We'll get that sorted for next time. The next session is on the 13th of March, and the final one is the 25th of March. It will be the same presentation, so if you've seen this one, you don't have to come again, but it might be helpful to let other people know that we'll be doing these two sessions. And there could be different questions or comments that get raised throughout the session. So please do attend again if you want, if you've got something to ask. And if you'd like more information, please get in touch with us. Also, just want to highlight as well our website, which has our wellbeing area. So there's information in there for people to access about all different kind of health and wellbeing concerns, resources, signposting, links to other places. So please have a look at our health and wellbeing area as well. So I will stop us there if there's no other questions or comments. Oh, hold on, we've got something. I'll just flash this up. Joe, again, introduced to the Stay Alive app a few years ago. safe plan templates for people offering support as well as people who are living with suicidal ideation. So yeah, thanks, Joe. Loads of helpful things to have a look at as well if you are interested in having a bit more information about where to signpost people to, or what to do if somebody, you know, is having suicidal ideation and you want to support them to make a safety plan. Loads of options. Thanks, Joe. And thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you very much, Patrick, for your time. And we'll end it there. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Patrick. Thanks, Steve. Bye bye.